Hi, everyone. So we're going to split our time up between myself and Olga Spivak from DaVinci Payments. Hers will be a more real-world case study. Mine's going to be more theory around technology and culture. So I run a company called Humantelligence. We're a recruiting and culture software company. We measure, manage, and help you recruit for culture. So I want to talk about technologies out there right now that are helping to measure culture. And things that you guys should consider when you evaluate different HR technologies. So three slides on Humantelligence, then I'll go into more theory and thought leadership. So we make culture simple. We're the first company to accurately measure it, and I'll explain what that means. We manage it, and we hire it for you. We are cloud analytics in the definition that Ben had of a thin slice of AI. We automate processes out of a company and the use of labor out of the process so that you can actually have a system make a decision for you on hiring, on creating diversity of thought in your teams, and optimizing performance by the balance of the psychology of your teams. At the end of the day, one of the things that makes Humantelligence so powerful is up until now, even though CHROs have a seat at the table with CFOs, most would argue, oh, the CFO is going to figure out why a division is profitable, and they probably have more impact on the profitability of a company. With a tool like this and many other tools like this, the CHRO now will be able to explain the why certain lines of business, divisions, or functional areas are not profitable and start to fix that through HR and through HR technology. So this kind of puts HR as a business performance function, not just as a personnel or people function. We have got tons of clients. I'll talk about some of these at the end. Even some of the partners that we're talking to right now, PwC, BCG, they have culture measurement tools that they realize actually are not measuring culture. They're more just surveys, asking executives what they think they are, and they realize that if there's a technology that's data-driven, and now there are many coming out, all of you, including all their future clients, are going to be able to measure accurately culture. When this company was started 6 years ago, I got together a room of very senior executives around the world to say, now that there's technology, what can we do with that technology to actually impact culture? And so I got Ian Ziskin, a Fortune 30 CHRO, who's best friends with Laszlo Bock out of Google. He was the CHRO Northrop Grumman, together with Mike DiGregorio, the CFO of Korn Ferry, Ed Renzi, the bottom left, the former CEO of McDonald's for 17 years, Anna Dutra, many of you might know her. She's the one who built Korn Ferry's leadership and talent consulting division from $0 to $500 million. Today, it's half of the revenue of Korn Ferry, as well as the CIO of Burger King, Raj Rawal, and the former president of Monster.com. All of us got together and said, if we raise enough money, let's go out and buy technologies and buy science so that we can finally include the EQ, emotional intelligence, into software so that you can leverage those insights across a company. And that's the foundation of where Humantelligence came from, but also where there's a lot of companies, as Ben mentioned, that are headed that way. Just quick thing on me, because I look young, but I'm actually 50, so I've done a lot of work. So a lot of what I say is actually based on good experience. Had really academic parents, hence good schools. My true school for business was Procter & Gamble. Went to Germany, was the guy who relaunched Puma worldwide. That's kind of my claim to fame. It was a bankrupt company. They hired me to be head of operations, strategy, and marketing. Got lucky at Siebel Systems. We grew from 200 employees to 12,000 employees in 1 year. So for all of you in HR, imagine hiring 1,000 people a month for 12 months, 20 million to 3 billion in 2 years. For those of you who've worked outside the US, I was also on the operating committee for Decathlon. Decathlon is the pronunciation. They're a $120 billion sports manufacturer with over 250,000 employees. I ran 50,000 employees in Europe and then came and ran the US division. Second career was headhunting at Heidrick & Struggles, youngest partner there, highest billing partner at Korn Ferry under 50, and then started my own search firm before getting those executives that you saw to try to figure out how can we take technology and apply it to HR. So, audience question. God, these lights are bright, Ben, you're not kidding. What is culture? This is a very vague topic. I want to just hear some ideas of what you guys believe is culture and how you're measuring it at your companies. Anyone venture to guess how they think of culture at their organizations? Okay, norms, beliefs, behaviors. What else? Come on, it's Sunday. You're not tired yet? Okay, who here, raise your hand if culture is important to your company? Okay, I should say 100%. Okay. Okay, so it's very important, okay, and 92% of executives in their surveys say that. So let's go through on what it is and what it's not, because when I talk about what tools are out there to measure culture, we all have to align on what it is. And this part of the presentation, I'm going to kind of push the envelope here. I'm going to say things that are, for HR executives, borderline offensive, so I apologize in advance. But I think it's just good for you guys to think of different ways around thinking of culture. So first of all, on the left side, let's talk about what culture is not, okay? Those 6 things there on the left are really important. And if you guys take anything away from this presentation today, take away this slide. This is one of the aha moments. Okay, vision. Every company should have a vision, and every company should have a mission. Really important, but it's not your culture. Benefits, not your culture. Apple, Microsoft, very different cultures. If they both gave the same benefits, let's say Mindful Mondays, right, yoga, they bring a yoga teacher in. Let's say they give free college education for the kids of all the people who work there 5 years or longer, and Fridays that you can work from home. Whatever the benefits are, they're awesome. It doesn't mean that Microsoft and Apple have anything to do with each other. So benefits are not your culture. Very important thing, but not your culture. Engagement surveys. Let's just get it straight right here that all that money that most of you are pouring into engagement surveys, really important to know who's happy and not. But it's not your culture. And let me explain why. Let's go back to Apple and Microsoft. If Apple and Microsoft both did either Qualtrics or Perceptics or Gallup engagement surveys, would you recommend this company to a friend? Are you happy with your manager? Blah, blah, blah. You could end up with 60% of the employees at Apple and Microsoft super engaged. They love their company, love their boss, they love everything about it, right? They'd give their first child to the company. They're so in love, right? 30%, let's say, or 20%, it's a job, so-so. And then 10 or 20%, I hate this company, I hate my boss, hate everything. Can someone explain to me how just because they have the same exact results at Apple and Microsoft on their engagement surveys, how that means they have the same culture? An engagement survey tells you nothing about if you have the right people, the right groups, and the right roles to achieve your mission and goals. Culture is a business performance concept. Engagement surveys are not business performance enhancing in terms of do you have the right person in the right role who's, let's say, if it's a creative person, if they're in manufacturing, maybe they're in the wrong place, right? So let's be clear on that. Nobody's ever used engagement surveys, typically, the insights and the output in the recruiting process when you're hiring for culture fit. Don't understand that either. Leadership. Leadership is also not your culture. It's extremely important. But when the Uber CEO got fired 6 months ago, okay, 6 months later, we have a new CEO. He's been in place now for 4 or 5 months. You could survey 24,000 people of Uber around the world, and nobody's going to say that the processes and things where they get paid on time or things fall through the cracks, wherever it is as a company and the experience you have as an employee, nothing's changed. Maybe for the direct reports of the CEO, but culture does not trickle down from the top, okay, especially with 24,000 employees. And many of you have 10,000 employees or more. I run a company of 25 employees, and believe me, I would love it if everything trickled down to all my employees. So that's not culture. And these consultants who come in and survey your executives, like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, PwC, they come in and then they give you a big $1 million, cost structure for a nice booklet that explains everything. Be careful with those two. That's also not your culture. Now you have technology that can actually measure it bottom up. And you should have an aspirational culture. But even that might not be your culture. What it actually is your people, their psychology, and the work environment they create or establish. And today it is measurable. And so that world of assessments that a lot of you already use, it's being evolved into a world of culture, whereas assessments are all about self-awareness. Okay, nobody goes to work anymore and works alone. You work with others. So self-awareness and assessments is moving into emotional intelligence, where how do I interact with the environment that I'm in? How do I interact with other people? How does this team, Harvard Business Review, front page article April last year, the key to success at team level is the work styles of a team. All of these are now measurable, and a lot of assessment tools are getting there. We're one of them, where you can now roll up and measure the behaviors, the motivators, and the work environment, what we call BMW, behaviors, motivators, work environment, quickly. Imagine 10,000 people take a 10-minute test, and in 1 week, you know the culture of every group of your organization. These are some of the articles. If you want, I can send you this presentation. Just write to me or come by the booth over there one day. The Culture Factor article with the penguins basically shows that 92% of executives are hiring themselves. People hire who they like. Okay? And what does that lead to? It's what the researchers call cascading thought. So you end up having not a very good problem-solving organization, and you also end up having everyone thinking alike, and it doesn't work out for productivity or profitability for companies. Oh, and by the way, the big aha is it's no longer about corporate culture. It's about team culture. So you should actually understand what is the team culture for every team in my organization. Does anybody would argue that the Starbucks barista and team of baristas, even though they're doing the same job in New York City and Miami, would you think that the culture is the same at that Starbucks store in 52nd Street and Broadway as it is in Hialeah, Miami, where it's all Latins? The way they behave, motivate, and work, and the way they communicate in Hialeah with customers, maybe they take 10, 15 minutes and chat with the customer. Maybe they touch the customer's children and start to hold the baby. Spend 20 minutes. That's great Net Promoter Score in Miami. Great service. That same barista and team of baristas doing those kind of things in New York City, they probably get sued, the store would get closed down, nobody would ever come back again, okay? And that's the same job, same company, same team, same training, but the culture is completely different in Starbucks in Miami as it is in New York, as it is in Seattle, as it is in Sao Paulo, Lagos, Nigeria, or Minsk, Belarus. There's a report that came out by HR Comm. If you guys want, just again, email me or come to the booth. I'll get you it. It's the first of its kind. They interview over 570 or so executives from HR on culture, and they ask a ton of questions, like 40 pages. It really gives insights around culture and what you should be looking at for technologies to identify the different subcultures in your organization. I'll just highlight some of the yellow points. 78% of HR professionals believe different departments have different cultures, kind of like the Starbucks example I gave you. In this one, in the middle, 75%, these are all output from this HR.com study, 75% of HR executives believe that different teams have different cultures from each other. And only 50% of HR professionals can describe the culture of other teams and departments well. Imagine when I met the CHRO of Coca-Cola North America, Peter Green. They brought him back from Denmark after about a year on the job. And I went to him, I said, hey, Peter, you have 30,000 employees. You have about 3,000 team leaders, right? Divide by 10. Yeah, that's right. I go, and you guys should all do this at your companies. What if you asked your team leaders, your 3,000, what their team culture is? Would they be able to answer that question? And so you should think for yourselves, can your team leaders answer the question what their team culture is? And the reality is, no, they're going to either default to the company culture that's aspirational on all the company t-shirts and coffee mugs and on the screensavers, okay? But when you say back to them, well, no, not the people, the 29,000 people you've never met, just your team. The reality is they won't be able to articulate two behaviors, two values or motivators, and two work styles. Now, why is that a problem? Other than that first slide I said remember, here's the second thing you should remember, and then you don't have to remember anything else. This is the aha moment. If none of your team leaders can articulate their culture of their team, how are they hiring for fit into that team? Whether they're trying to clone and continue that culture of success or add to that culture and have diversity of thought. If they don't know how to articulate it, how are they doing that? They're not. And this shows you all the research that people hire who they like. They're not hiring for a specific culture that they know. Let's see here. I'm going to just go through some of these quickly. So 69% of HR professionals from that survey admit that their organizations often hire likable candidates who turn out to be a poor fit. This guy who went to Yale, won't hold it against him, he did a great research project where he proved that all interviews are useless. Anytime you meet someone, it's impossible to pick of 5 finalists, for instance, the one that everybody likes least over the one that people like the most, even though the one they like the least might add the most diversity of thought to the team. You always will pick who you like more. You need technology now to get rid of that subjectivity up earlier in the funnel of recruiting. So selection tools, screening tools, selection tools, tools like ours, all the things Ben talked about, earlier in the funnel will get you to a more diverse candidate pool in the final funnel. There really hasn't been, in terms of quality of hire, right? All the software you've been seeing to this day has been really about automating the process, right? So if you look at ATS systems, all they're doing is making the process more efficient, right? And making the candidate experience better. But there really hasn't been how do I find a better quality candidate since the resume? And Leonardo da Vinci actually wrote the first resume 540 years ago. And if you type that up, hasn't changed at all, really, actually. And there's 5 billion of them on this planet, 2.5 times more than Google impact. So pretty important document, and there's a reason why that's still the basis for hiring. Amy Christoph Brown came out and did all this research that showed that the lowest level of performance is resume screens, background reviews, and reference checks, and technical skills. That's the tools in the middle column. The true high performance is more the EQ, right? Resume is only 30% predictive. The EQ and how you fit with other people and how you work with others, that's actually 60 to 70% predictive. The future is no longer the ineffective way of just looking at skills and resumes. It's actually who you are. And high review and some of these interview video things, as Ben mentioned, you might not end up with the George Clooney. You need something a little bit more data-driven, like some of these deeper assessment tools that exist. High-level assessments by themselves without a platform that gives you insights are just an assessment. Even though Humantelligence has an assessment tool, for instance, we don't charge for the assessment. You can give it to 30,000 people. There's zero value in an assessment, okay? So, well, it's great value for the individual, but for the company, what you get is insight. So the bottom level there, the self-assessments, only getting self-awareness isn't where the value is. The value is where a platform can help two people communicate better, understand, connect, where a team leader can see their culture and get tips on what their strengths, weaknesses, and blind spots are of that team culture, all the way up to the group and the community level. Where on any device, 24/7, you can pull up in a gamified way, side by side, seeing where am I similar and different, 40%, 90% similar or different, and what are the call-outs I can work better with this person. Where you don't need a consultant, you don't need somebody certified, you don't need a whole army of HR people implementing this, where literally 10,000 people within 24 hours can be up on a platform getting true insights, where everyone becomes emotionally intelligent, where everyone becomes an industrial psychologist, instantly. And imagine, for those who've been married, I've been married a year and a half, so maybe this won't apply, but imagine from the day you met your spouse to the day to 10 years in, how well you communicate. Imagine if you could infuse that kind of level of understanding and connection throughout your company within 1 week. Imagine you write an email, you pull up the email, type a name of somebody, and AI, you click on the person's name, and AI pulls up who you are, who they are, and how you should best work together in your email, in your workflow. In your calendars, you go into a meeting, imagine a calendar sharing with you, it tells the same thing for someone in the meeting you don't know. And the next version of products like this is where it tells you the culture of the group that you're going to meet with and who's going to push back. Imagine seeing the culture of your team. Seeing that on the right, for instance, my company, 6 years ago, I hired a great team. They're all creative. New solutions, variety, flexibility. That was wonderful. But guess what? Two and a half years ago, we were like, oh my God, why aren't we scaling? We had some clients, we had some good positioning. Well, we didn't have any systematic people in the organization. And it didn't matter how much the CEO said, hey, let's be systematic. If you don't have people in your company who are the norms and live the behaviors you want or the work styles, you're not going to get there. So we use tools like this, and all of you will use tools like this to create a future roadmap for culture. Just like you have a strategy roadmap, a product roadmap, and a technology roadmap, you should all start thinking about having a culture roadmap for every single team, every group, every division in your company. Where you can see maps of these cultures, where you can look at high performers and low performers. And I'm going to finish here and use it to cut out 80% of the recruiting process. I'm going to finish here with 2 case studies, and then I'll bring Olga up to the stage. Honda thought that they had a creative, innovative culture. Okay, this is 2012, 13. And so they had all the metrics that a lot of you follow. They had an engagement survey where 96% of employees were engaged from the engagement survey, right? They answer all the questions, I like my job. They also have employment for life at Honda North America, and it's unionized, so who wouldn't think it's awesome, right? They had low turnover, less than 2% turnover, and they had their aspirational culture was Honda creative, innovative. It was on all the t-shirts. But guess what? Their products were going like this in the marketplace, losing millions of dollars and 2-3% market share a year from 10, 11, and 12. So we went to them and said, hey, maybe all these metrics, engagement surveys, your aspirational culture, and low turnover, maybe those aren't truly KPIs around culture. Okay? And so we measured the company. It turns out that only 8 to 12% of the company had any behaviors, motivators, values, or work styles that had anything to do with creative, innovative. So then they brought in a consulting firm. Okay, we don't do that. And there's lots of consulting firms that now with data can help Honda transform. And sure enough, Honda's products in the marketplace started going up again. And the Car and Driver and all the magazines and market feedback went from that their products were not creative and innovative to they were. So we actually won 4 years in a row the Honda Premier Partner Award. Nobody's ever won it twice, right? And basically their products were not aligned with their company's vision because the people weren't aligned with it. The last example I'll give is Ashley Furniture. 22,000 employees, 10 manufacturing sites, 115% turnover. Can you imagine going through 25,000 people a year? They interview 10,000 people a month. So no assessment tool has ever worked before, because most assessment tools are just about self-awareness. They're not giving insights. To Ben's point, it's not about data for one person. It's the insights that you can roll up with data analytics across your people. And those insights basically showed that there were 4 things that could explain performance. And so they got rid of 10,000 interviews. They give the same test to everybody who comes in, just onto the store floor on a tablet, and they've already reduced turnover by 40% in the first quarter. The updated numbers are even more accelerated than that. So this year, they're not saving just $3.6 million. That's their number. They told us that they're actually saving $10 million over the course of this year. So HR is a performance function now with tools like this. I'm going to now invite Olga Spivak from DaVinci Payments. DaVinci Payments is a global payment solution company that focuses on rebates and rewards. They're doubling the headcount of the organization. And a fun fact about Olga is that she's from Belarus. She's Belarusian from Minsk. And my fun fact, and you can come talk to me about it later, is I was on season 10 of The Apprentice with Donald Trump in the boardroom. I replaced George and told him who to hire and fire. So if you want a real story about Donald Trump, I have lots of them.
Wow, thank you, Juan. Hi, I'm very excited to be here at the HR Tech Connect, and this slide wasn't supposed to come up until a little bit later, but what I'd love to do is ask the audience about how many of you have your phones on you right now? Okay, so pretty much all of you. If I can ask you a favor and define culture of technology and what that means to you, and text it or download the app, Poll Everywhere, to give your answers. And let's see what happens. Are you seeing it? Nope. Give us a second. We're trying to get the technology to define the culture of technology and what that means to you. And if you can text it to 22333, perfect. Now we're starting to see some answers. I'll give it one more minute. Wow. Very cool. We'll stop here. So you guys have just defined the era that have actually entered the culture of technology. So from your definition, it's about staying connected and it's about evolving into the future. So the culture of technology to you, as you guys can see, is results, decision, the core, environment, humans, rockstar, driven, innovation. That's all awesome. So I'm here to take a little bit of a different perspective. You heard from Juan, and what I'd love to do is share some of the proven research and pair it with real stories. Throughout my 16-year career in human resources, I have had a pleasure of starting HR departments from scratch in every company that I worked for, whether it was a 33,000 global organization to consulting to an international organization which was starting a subsidiary in United States with 1 employee. In any case, I had many opportunities to implement new technologies in companies that I worked for and consulted and learned many, many lessons and, of course, learned what went wrong. What my experience made me realize is that people, and myself included at times, have been hiding and even blaming technology for years in fear of automation, privacy issues, and curiosity of what does technology do for culture, for personalities, and emotions, not only in the workplace, but in the society overall. So my own curiosity made me research this topic deeper and helped me make connections throughout further system implementations and personal experiences to have more holistic perspective on the diverse world of many, many different cultures. And what I learned is that the future of technology I always imagined as a kid and feared in some part of my adulthood is here right now. Would you guys agree with that? Yeah. So the culture of technology is happening, and it's no longer about change management. It's really about using the technology to bring out emotions in the workplaces, collaborating toward a common purpose, building real trusting relationships, and making an impact, embracing technological advances versus, in a way, resisting them. A culture of technology is as much about our own experience as the experience we want to provide to others. So, while it's customary and ordinary to talk about successes, I really want to focus on my learnings. 2 years ago, I was hired to start a new foreign function called Human Resources at a company called Swift Prepaid Solutions. And if you guys are aware of Swift Prepaid Solutions, it's a company where we bring out the biggest value of virtual and physical payments around the globe with rewards, recognition, incentives, and we have evolved as an organization over the past 2 years. We are now known as DaVinci Payments, and we operate on a global scale. And with that being said, I was actually the 3rd person hired into a company which HR was ran by CEO and CFO for 18 years. And being the first outside leader being hired into an organization, let me tell you, it was really tough. And in our weekly leadership team meetings with our CEO and CFO, we talked about growing the company by 3x while keeping culture the same. And as we know, culture evolves very, very rapidly. And that was the point when I needed a diversity of thought. And I attended a conference very similar to this one, and that's where I met Juan with Humantelligence. So when I met Juan, I went through a demo and honestly fell in love with the product. I'm an internationally certified coach, and I have experience with MBTI, DISC profiles, and many, many other assessments that I brought to organizations in the past, which made me realize that we put so much effort into assessments and 360s, but at the end of the day, it all becomes a faded and a very, very expensive memory. And in my experience, it hasn't stuck around. So when I saw what you can do in 10 to 12 minutes, gave me high hope for engaging all of our organization. So while I do have experience with all of the assessments, I decided to actually try out Humantelligence with our senior leadership team and do a pilot. Humantelligence just sounded too good to be true. So for us, I engaged each person in our leadership team, and by then, we actually hired an entire C-suite. It was an amazing opportunity for us to become aware of our own behaviors, our own emotions, and solve unnecessary problems that we were not doing the justice of solving. When you have a new team and the organization is storming, it's really important to focus on each and every personality and be able to connect on that emotional level. So with that being said, this is a picture of our offsite meeting where we really focused on fostering the meaning and connection to every person. Took a very, very holistic approach. We actually shed a few tears during this offsite. We laughed a lot, but at the end of the day, what we were able to do, we were able to align our values, our goals to individual, team, and company level. So after our pilot was done, I rolled out HT to the entire organization and began comparing culture in various teams. Being able to identify and label subcultures in each department was really innovational for us. I also introduced the HT's talent fit into the organization, which helped me focus on characteristics that we look for each role and make sure that we make a difference for people by promoting within, by really encouraging internal mobility and making sure that we focus on soft skills as much as people focus on hard skills. I can give you a quick specific example. One of our customer service agents recently really wanted to apply for a QA role in our technology department, and he felt like he couldn't do it because he didn't have the technical skills. I encouraged him to take the HT profile. He matched the team perfectly, and he had a couple of different features and a couple of different characteristics that he was able to bring to the table. And we promoted him from customer service to our QA analyst in the technology department, and he really is a lucky charm in the organization right now, and that changed his life. So I also currently use HT for various purposes. One is, yes, pulse surveys. You heard Juan talk a little bit about engagement surveys, pulse surveys, fulfillment surveys. One of the things that I do in our organization is I hold each leader accountable to employee NPS. And that actually is part of our performance evaluation tool to make sure that leaders are responsible for sharing profiles of all employees to help employees succeed in the organization. So, and many of us have been new employees at one point in time, right? And when you're a new employee, you're given so many different tools. You're giving a roadmap to an organizational chart. You can absolutely have easy access on who to call and what to do. What you don't have is a roadmap to personalities in the organization, and I wish I had one when I first started at DaVinci. So I implemented Humantelligence as a part of our onboarding process, where organization provides access to all of our employees to HT profiles as well as team culture, which has been monumental, especially in today's economy. We have very low turnover, And my approach is really to cherish and retain our talent instead of trying to hire from outside. So what I'd love to do is talk a little bit about the strategic benefits of technology in the workplace, which is really about people and their psychological safety, and how can HR be a strategic contributor in the organization. So what I've done is I worked with our board of directors to set goals for 2020, and one of our goals is focusing on people, making sure we retain our high performers, and making sure that we trickle down all of our business goals from one single element of culture, with an understanding that there are subcultures, and how do we position each department for success? How do we treat each department leader differently at this point? So as I mentioned, one of our strategies is to cherish and retain our current workforce, and we also use Humantelligence for brand advocacy. What I see our employees doing voluntarily is creating different labels of their work motivators and their team cultures to find out how they best interact with one another. We are able to have difficult conversations around soft skill needs, and we're able to develop leaders in the organization, mentors and coaches around HT profiles. Also, it gives me a lot of insight in terms of providing metrics, soft metrics, to the board of directors, where we are able to really predict the future of an organization and continue to scale. So with that being said, I'm really excited to be here today with all of you, to get to know you guys over the next 2.5 days, and share again experiences, learnings, and open room for questions for Juan and I. Juan, if you wouldn't mind coming up here, I'll be happy to answer questions from the audience, and we have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Juan, I have a question for you. You mentioned earlier that leadership is not culture. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I get the term, maybe the corporate leadership, but wouldn't the team leaders set the tone for culture? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Really decisive, maybe very team-oriented, there's a high likelihood they're going to hire people like that. But whether they have monthly meetings or things that people call how you manage, right? Monthly meetings and the cadence of those meetings, all those things, it's part of the process and the structure which would fit under work environment. So leadership is just a vague concept. Like if you have one bad leader in a company, like the Uber example, doesn't mean that all of Uber has a bad culture. So it's more, try to find the elements that lead to the leadership you want in your company. So it's more of a psychology and work environment that leads to a certain type of leadership versus any one person imprinting the entire company. I think we give too much credit for leaders impacting culture when it's really your people that are going to impact your culture a hell of a lot more than each leader. But you got to have a leader who's really structured, but if that leader only hires unstructured creative people, the work output is going to be unstructured people, even if the leader wants everybody to be structured. That's what I meant by that. More questions?
Yes. Hi, Subhash Varghese from Comcast. How do you deal with the sort of tension that arises when you have a team that's operating at a certain culture, particularly when a leader is new, even not at the highest levels? So you have a leader that wants to create a more innovative culture. The team's culture actually is to not be that innovative. Or vice versa, if you have a team that wants to be innovative and a leader that's preventing that. How do you manage that tension when it exists?
Yeah, so there are tools out there, ours is one of them, where the first step is showing data, right? A leader telling a team, I want you to be more innovative or creative, the team doesn't get it. But if you show the team that they're all very deliberate and they're all very cautious and there's actually hard data, and then you can develop each person on every metric of the elements, you can actually then grow those people and develop that talent to act and be more creative. So the whole mistake is everybody's trying to transform their cultures without even knowing what the starting point is, right? Every one of you in here has probably been part of some culture transformation. But it's amazing that that transformation has begun from a conceptual point that was never validated. So the key to that friction and getting from point A to B is first measuring it, making it transparent, showing everybody where they are on that axis across, if it's not 4 of 28 things, all 28, whatever it may be, and then managing them with a culture roadmap and individual tools and development to get to that place. Right? For example, there was a truck company that was losing $3 million a year because the truckers, 3,000 truckers, were spending $5 grand or 10 grand more on gas every year. Same distance traveled. And the leadership of this company was like, the trucking company was like, how can we be losing $3 million from these 3,000 truckers? And you know what? It was simple. We went in, tested everybody, and it turned out that the leaders wanted to save money. The leaders didn't want people wasting gas. Turned out that the truckers, those 3,000 versus the other 7,000 truckers, the 3,000 truckers were extreme decisive. So at red lights, imagine a 10,000 payload truck, at red lights when it turned green, they would just floor it. And then passing on the highway, imagine a 10,000 payload truck trying to pass, how much more gas it consumes, right? So there's one example where, can you just tell these truck drivers, hey Bob, hey Mary, just don't gun it so hard. Like just change being decisive. Probably not going to work. So they put catalytic converters in, and like we've all gone golfing at some point in our life. Those golf carts when we're young, you floor it and it barely moves. So they save $3 million a year by changing the behaviors of people through a catalytic converter. So there's lots. Once you have the data, there's lots of ways of changing culture. But nobody today actually has the data on their team. And just an engagement survey that tells you if people are happy or pissed off or sad isn't really going to help you get there on being more business performance oriented. If you want to add.
Yes, actually, I have specific examples from our organization. I know that we are running out a little bit of time, but what I can do is certainly connect with you and share some of those examples that I lived through just a few months ago.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you have any experience in using this as an integration tool where the culture hasn't fully been formed as a result of the integration, and have you used it in this manner?
Yeah, so there was one large company that, two companies that are 10 billion larger that are merging. And so the whole dilemma typically is, okay, are we going to take on the acquiring company's culture or the acquiree? And what the management teams of both companies said, we're going to create culture C, not culture A or B. We're going to create culture C. So they're using our tool to create the culture of the overarching company, and it's more based on the motivators or values that's going to be similar for everybody. And then on the subculture parts, the behaviors and work styles will be different by finance, accounting versus marketing, sales. But they are using our tool to create that option C and have everybody go towards that, which actually takes away this whole feeling like somebody's better than the other. So it can be used for that, and then you can scale it down throughout the whole organization and then measure where people are on that culture roadmap. So literally we have a tool called a roadmap, culture roadmap tool that every team can set it, manage their team to it, hire to it, and it's all visual, very simple. You don't have to be an IO psychologist, but the companies are using the tool for that. 30 seconds, one question about Donald Trump? Okay, one story on Donald Trump. And this is not a political story, so I won't go into he's good or bad. I'll just go into he's crass, which is objective. So every day for 4 weeks, I'd sit with him for 30 minutes before the shooting of the show at night. It was 6 nights a week, Monday through Saturday night, 4 or 5 hours each night. And I'd be talking, it was me, and I replaced George in the boardroom, and another woman who was a recruiter replaced his daughter. And we'd be talking, the three of us, and then they'd say, Donald, come in. And so he'd stand up, and almost like a magician, he'd change his persona. He was a really nice, friendly guy, and all of a sudden he'd put on this act. So like a populist in Latin America, if you know what I mean. And he'd go out into the room, and for the next 4 hours, he was a different guy than he was in the room. So I truly believe that who he is at home is very different than in public. It's like kind of an act. But the thing that shocked me was, in my last 5 seconds, every time I walked into the boardroom, he'd take his gum out and throw it on the floor, and an intern would come and pick it up. And I was like, are you kidding me? And every night for 4 weeks, craziest thing I've ever seen. Anyways.